911 words, within the 900 plus or minus 5% target. Here's the script. For 54 years, the official record said a Japanese runner named Shizo Kanakuri simply vanished during the 1912 Stockholm Olympic Marathon, vanished into the woods, into legend, into nothing. That's the story they tell. It isn't what happened. Someone made sure you'd never hear the rest of it. Here's what the records were rewritten to hide. Stockholm, July 1912. Kanakuri is 20 years old. He's Japan's first Olympic marathoner, sent to prove his country belongs on the world stage. The heat that day hits 90 degrees. Runners collapse in the street. One competitor later dies from the conditions. Kanakuri is running on almost no sleep after an 18-day boat and train journey from Tokyo with barely any real preparation once he lands. Somewhere past the 30-kilometer mark, he stumbles off the course. He walks into a nearby garden. A Swedish family finds him disoriented and gives him orange juice and a place to rest. Kanakuri never returns to the race. Officials wait at the finish line. He never checks in. By nightfall, they file him as missing. For decades, that's the entire story, a Japanese runner who wandered off and disappeared during a heat wave. Sweden even keeps him on a missing persons list. Actual paperwork actively open for over 50 years. But here's the first crack. Kanakuri wasn't lost. He knew exactly where he was. He recovered that same evening. He caught a train to Stockholm the next morning. Within days, he boarded a ship home to Japan. He wasn't found unconscious in a ditch somewhere. He simply left. And he never told a single Olympic official that he was withdrawing. Not the Swedish organizers. Not his own Japanese team. He walked away from the biggest race of his life and let the world assume the worst, because the truth felt worse to him than disappearing. The obvious explanation is shame. A young athlete, humiliated, slips home quietly rather than face his country's disappointment. That's what most accounts settle for, and it's not wrong exactly. But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain why Japanese officials, once Kanakuri resurfaced at home alive and well, never corrected the record either. It doesn't explain why the International Olympic Committee, notified through back channels that their missing marathoner had simply gone home, chose to do nothing. No update, no footnote, no official withdrawal filed anywhere. The paperwork stayed open. A grown man alive, coaching students in Japan for the next 50 years, remained officially unaccounted for in a country he hadn't set foot in since 1912. That's not an accident. That's a choice, made by people who had every reason to make the mystery disappear instead of the man. Here's what they actually buried. In 1912, embarrassment was currency. Sweden had spent enormous money and reputation hosting its first Olympics, selling the games to the world as flawless, modern, orderly. A runner simply quitting and walking off wasn't just personal shame. It was a loose thread in the story organizers wanted told about their spotless new games. And Japan, competing at its first Olympics ever, desperate to be taken seriously by the Western powers watching, had no interest in headlines about their runner collapsing and fleeing without a word to anyone. So the two institutions that should have closed the file both quietly let it stay open instead. A mystery is forgivable. A quitter is not. Missing, presumed lost in the woods, protected everyone's reputation. The truth that a shamed young man simply went home protected no one. So they let missing stand. For 54 years, that's what stood in for the truth until a Swedish television crew, digging through old Olympic curiosities in 1966, tracked Kanakuri down. He was alive. 69 years old, teaching geography in a small town called Tamana, with a full life the record books never once mentioned. They invited him back to finally finish. In 1967, at 75, he ran the final 200 meters of the 1912 marathon. His official time, 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, 20.3 seconds. Officials called it the slowest marathon in history and laughed about it in press releases. It became a cute footnote, a trivia answer, a story about endurance and good humor. That framing is its own kind of burial. It turns a deliberate, decades-long institutional silence into a charming accident nobody has to answer for. Nobody asked why Sweden let a false missing persons file sit untouched for half a century without one follow-up call. Nobody asked why Japan's Olympic Committee, knowing full well their athlete was alive and teaching school, never once picked up the phone to correct Stockholm. The cost wasn't just Kanakuri's reputation, quietly left to rot for decades as the one who vanished. It was the truth itself, replaced by a version everyone on both sides found easier to live with. He spent his whole life being remembered as the man who disappeared, when the real story was that people in power decided disappearing was more convenient than admitting the truth. Kanakuri died in 1983, still best known for a race he actually finished, just 54 years late. He never publicly said who, exactly, decided to leave that file open all those decades. Neither government ever fully explained it. So the question stands, unanswered, the same way his file did for half a century. How many other missing athletes out there were never actually lost at all?